Ever feel like your English is letting you down when you're trying to really express how you feel?
Mm-hmm.
Going beyond just happy or sad?
Mm.
Well, you are not alone.
Mm.
And that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive today.
Yeah.
We're going to be exploring how to express emotions powerfully in English. And we've got some really cool stuff to uncover.
Right.
We're talking descriptive adjectives,
Mm.
powerful idioms,
Yeah.
even the magic of metaphors.
Yeah.
And to help us unpack all of this, I've got an expert here with me today
Hi.
who's going to break down why this is so important for communication, going way beyond just vocabulary.
Absolutely. It is fascinating how language can let us convey not just information, but also our inner world, like our feelings and all.
Okay, so let's dive right in. Now, our sources for this deep dive offer just a ton of tips.
Okay.
But before we even get to the how, I'm curious about the why.
Okay.
Why is mastering emotional expression so vital, even beyond just, expanding our vocabulary?
Well, think about it. When someone tells you they're happy, do you really get how deep that emotion is? I mean, are they overjoyed, content, maybe just pleased?
Right.
It's those nuances, the shades of meaning that really capture the human experience.
That's so true.
Yeah.
So it's not just about, like, finding synonyms.
Right.
It's about choosing the word that most accurately reflects that intensity
Yes,
and the complexity of what we're feeling.
exactly. And, this actually connects to something else that's really interesting. Cultural aspects of emotional expression.
Uh-huh.
Some cultures are way more expressive than others, and these differences can really affect how we communicate.
Oh, for sure. So you're saying, like, someone from a culture that values maybe emotional restraint might come across as kind of indifferent
Yes.
or detached in a culture where being really open with your emotions is just the norm.
Exactly. Recognizing these cultural nuances is so important
Hmm.
to avoid misunderstandings and really foster a genuine connection.
Yeah,
Mastering emotional expression in English isn't just about grammar and vocabulary.
right.
It's about understanding a cultural code.
It's like learning a whole new way of interacting with the world.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. Now, our sources outline 5 powerful techniques to kind of amp up emotional expression in English. The first one is descriptive adjectives. It seems simple enough,
Yeah.
but I'm guessing there's more to it than just grabbing a thesaurus.
Absolutely. Choosing the right adjective can totally transform how impactful your message is.
Oh, interesting.
Instead of saying, I'm happy, imagine saying, I'm ecstatic.
Wow.
Or I'm delighted.
Yeah,
You've suddenly created a much more vivid picture of how you're feeling.
you've painted a picture. I get it. But wouldn't it sound like a bit forced or unnatural to use such strong adjectives all the time?
Well, that's where the art of nuance comes out. The key is to choose adjectives that fit the situation and your
Mhm.
personality. If you aced a test, you might feel proud or accomplished.
Right.
But if you win the lottery, then ecstatic or overjoyed might fit better.
It's about matching the intensity of the word to the intensity of the emotion.
Yes,
It seems like practice is key here.
absolutely.
The more we experiment with these different adjectives, the more nuanced and expressive our language becomes.
Exactly. Like any skill, the more you do it, the more natural and effortless it becomes.
Okay, so descriptive adjectives, check. Next on the list, we have idioms.
Ooh, idioms.
These can be so tricky, but when you use them well, they add a certain fluency and like a cultural flair to our language.
Idioms are so cool because they give you a glimpse into the shared history and even the humor of a language.
Right.
Like take the idiom over the moon, for example.
Okay.
Way more evocative than simply saying very happy, wouldn't you say?
It definitely paints a more vivid picture. But I imagine idioms can be really tricky for non-native speakers.
They can be, but that's kind of part of what makes them so rewarding to learn, right?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Using idioms correctly shows a deeper understanding of the language and the culture, and that can make a real difference in how people see you.
It's like you're unlocking a secret level of communication.
Exactly.
For our listener, it's like a chance to go beyond just textbook English
Yes.
and get into that realm of like authentic everyday conversation.
Exactly. And as you get more comfy with idioms, you'll find they add a natural rhythm and
Right.
that expressiveness to your speech.
That's really cool.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
let's move on to technique number 3, which is similes and metaphors.
Ooh.
These are all about using like figurative language
Yeah.
to create powerful images and evoke those emotions.
Yes.
Our source actually gives this example. Her heart was as heavy as lead to describe sadness.
That's such a great example of how metaphors can tap into our shared human experiences.
Yeah.
We all know what it's like to carry something heavy, so even if we haven't experienced that exact kind of sadness,
Yeah.
we can relate to the image and feel the emotion.
It's like you're painting a picture with words,
Yep.
allowing the listener to
Mhm.
not only understand, but also to feel the emotion.
Oh.
And metaphors can be so creative. They let us express ourselves in ways that, sometimes plain language just can't. What's a metaphor you might use to describe, like, feeling anxious?
That's a good one. Let me think. My thoughts were racing like a runaway train.
Oh, wow.
Captures that out of control feeling.
Yeah, I can see that. It
Yeah.
really does convey that sense of, like, frantic energy.
Uh-huh.
Okay, next up we have verbs. Now, this might seem pretty straightforward, but choosing the right verb
Uh-huh.
can make a world of difference in how we express our emotions.
Verbs are the action words of language, and they pack an emotional punch.
Right.
Saying, for instance, I cherish our memories conveys a much deeper feeling than simply saying, I like our memories.
Oh, I see what you mean. Cherish has that sense of value of love,
Yes.
while like feels much more like superficial.
Exactly.
It's like the difference between saying I ate dinner and I savored every bite.
Precisely. When we pay attention to our choice of verbs, it can elevate our language.
Right.
It makes our emotions resonate more.
I love that. Okay, last but not least, we have reflective questions.
Okay.
Our source says that these are all about expressing emotions indirectly by prompting the listener to think
Yes.
and feel along with us.
Yes.
Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah. Reflective questions are really powerful because they create a shared experience.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just saying how you feel, you invite the listener into that emotional space with you.
Interesting.
For example, instead of just saying, I'm so frustrated, you could ask, why does this always happen?
Oh, yeah.
You're expressing the same feeling, but
Right.
you're also
Yeah.
inviting the listener to, empathize and maybe even offer support.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about creating that connection and opening up a dialogue
Yes.
rather than just stating a fact. But
Yeah.
wouldn't that require like a certain level of vulnerability?
It does, and that's actually part of what makes these reflective questions so effective. By being vulnerable and inviting the listener in, you create this deeper level of connection and understanding.
So to recap, we've covered 5 techniques for boosting emotional expression: descriptive adjectives, idioms, similes and metaphors, strong verbs, and these reflective questions. I'm already feeling inspired.
And this is just the beginning. There's so much more to explore. The key is to have fun with it, experiment,
Right.
and see what works for you.
I love that approach.
Yeah.
It's all about, embracing that journey of language learning
Yes.
and discovering new ways to express yourself authentically. Speaking of which, our source also provides us with a toolkit of phrases that we can start using right now.
Oh, cool.
Can we maybe delve into that?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, it's like having a cheat sheet for emotions.
Right.
From joy and excitement to sadness, anger,
Mhm.
even fear.
It is. And some of these phrases are just like brilliant. For instance, instead of just saying, I'm happy, you could say, I'm on cloud 9.
Oh,
It really emphasizes that feeling of elation.
Totally.
I'm curious, what are some of the phrases that stand out to you?
Ooh, let me see. One that I find really interesting is, this makes my blood boil.
Oh, wow.
It's so visceral.
Yeah.
Powerful. You don't need a dictionary to understand how angry that is.
And you almost feel the heat.
Right.
I think what makes these expressions so effective is that they kind of bypass the logical part of our brain
Yeah.
and go straight for that emotional gut punch.
Exactly. They tap into a really primal understanding of emotion.
Yeah.
Think about the phrase my heart sank. It instantly makes you feel disappointed or
Yeah.
despair.
Yeah, it does. It's like you can feel the weight of that emotion.
Yeah.
Okay. Want to play a little game?
Sure.
I'll throw out a few phrases from our emotional toolkit.
Okay.
And you tell me what strikes you about them.
Right.
Why they're effective, or even a situation where you might use them. Ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. First up, I'm beaming with pride.
Oh, that's perfect for when you're expressing a deep sense of accomplishment
Mm-hmm.
or joy in someone else's achievements.
No.
I might use that when my kid does well in school.
Right.
Or when a close friend achieves a goal they've had for a long time. It conveys genuine happiness
Yeah.
and pride.
Okay, awesome. How about I'm at my wit's end?
Oh, that one's great. perfectly captures that feeling of frustration and exhaustion.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just don't have any options left, you know?
Right.
You might use that when you're dealing with a problem at work that won't go away.
Yeah.
Or a never-ending home renovation.
Oh, yeah. Those are the worst.
Or, honestly, even a toddler
Oh, for sure.
giving you a hard time.
It's like you've reached that breaking point.
Exactly.
Okay, here's another one. I have a bad feeling about this.
Oh, that one gives me chills.
Mhm.
It evokes this sense of foreboding, like something bad's going to happen.
Right.
It's like tapping into our intuition suggests that we need to be careful.
It's that warning signal from our gut instinct. Okay, last one. This is music to my ears.
Oh, I love that one. It's such a delightful expression of pure joy and satisfaction.
Mhm.
Like you've heard something wonderful, you know,
Right.
something that makes you really happy. I might use it when I hear good news
Yeah.
or a favorite song,
Right.
or even just like the sound of rain on a cozy evening.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've seen how these phrases can really add that color and intensity to how we express ourselves.
Uh-huh.
But, let's be real. Learning all these new words and expressions can feel kind of overwhelming.
Yeah, it can.
What are some practical tips for actually putting them into practice?
Well, that's where that practice makes perfect section in our source is so helpful.
Okay.
It suggests things like role-playing, watching movies, even recording yourself to analyze your speech.
I love the idea of role-playing. You could even grab a friend
Yes.
and practice different scenarios, like giving a presentation or having a difficult conversation. It's a fun way to, experiment with these phrases and see how they feel in different situations.
Yeah, and don't underestimate just watching movies and shows in English.
Oh, right.
It's a goldmine for learning how native speakers express emotion. Pay attention to their facial expressions, their tone of voice, even their body language.
It's like you get a front row seat to this masterclass in
Exactly.
emotional expression.
Yeah.
And for those who are feeling extra ambitious,
Yeah.
our source also suggests recording yourself speaking, which I know can feel a little awkward.
It can be, but it's super valuable.
Right.
It lets you hear yourself objectively, and you can identify areas where you can improve. Maybe you'll notice you're not using as much intonation as you thought,
Right.
or that you use certain filler words too much.
It's like having your own personal language coach, but without the cost.
Exactly.
And if you're feeling super ambitious, you could even transcribe your recordings
Wow.
and analyze how you're using language in even more detail.
Now you're talking. That's dedication.
Right. That could lead to some serious breakthroughs. Okay. I have one more tip to add.
Okay.
The emotion journal. I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but hear me out.
Okay.
Whenever you come across a new word, idiom, or phrase that, resonates with you,
Huh.
just write it down in a notebook.
I love that idea. It's like creating your own personal vocabulary bank for emotions. You can even write a sentence or two about
Wow.
how you might use it. What a great way to remember them.
Right. And as you revisit your journal
Yeah.
and practice those expressions, you'll find that they become more natural and effortless to use.
And that's when the magic happens, when those
Yeah.
expressions become part of your own voice and you
Right.
can connect with people on a deeper level.
So there you have it, a whole toolbox of tips and techniques for expressing yourself more effectively in English. We've talked about descriptive adjectives, powerful idioms, the magic of metaphors, strong verbs, reflective questions, and even some practice tips to help you along the way. What stands out to you as the most important takeaway for our listeners today?
I think the biggest takeaway is that emotional expression, it isn't about fancy words or complicated grammar.
Right.
It's about being real, being authentic, and, letting yourself be vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's about picking words that really show what you're feeling
Right.
and letting others in on that experience.
I love that. And it's so important to remember that, fluency, it's a journey.
Yes,
It takes time and practice to develop the skill of expressing yourself in another language.
exactly. And it's okay to make mistakes. Actually, those mistakes,
Right.
it can be really valuable learning experiences. I mean, think about it. I remember when I first started learning English, I tried to use the idiom kick the bucket in a conversation about my grandmother being sick.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it didn't go over well.
I can imagine.
But, my friends were really cool about it,
Yeah.
and they explained what it really meant.
Right.
It was embarrassing then,
Uh-huh.
but it taught me a lot about, context and cultural nuances.
Absolutely. That's a perfect example of how,
Yeah.
embracing those awkward moments
Yeah,
can actually make us learn faster.
totally. It's all part of the process.
Exactly. So, to our listener out there, don't be afraid to try things out, make mistakes.
Yes.
Keep pushing yourself to express those emotions more fully.
And remember, you're not alone in this. There are so many resources out there, language partners,
Mm-hmm.
online groups,
Right.
even the tips we've talked about today.
So true. And as you continue to kind of explore these nuances,
Yeah.
you'll find that how you communicate becomes more authentic.
Yes.
Your relationships get deeper.
Absolutely.
And just your whole experience with English,
Yeah.
it gets richer and more rewarding.
Before we finish up, I want to leave our listener with one last thought. Now that you have all these tools, I want you to think about a conversation you had recently
Yeah.
where you maybe struggled to really express yourself.
Ooh, that's good.
Think about how you might approach it differently now. What words, what phrases could you use to show your true feelings?
Right.
Could you try an idiom, a metaphor,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even one of those reflective questions?
What a great way to, put all these skills to the test.
Exactly. And as you do, remember that the real power of language,
Yeah.
it's not just in the words themselves.
Right.
It's the intention, the emotion behind them. So go out there, express yourself, and embrace this journey of connecting with others through English.
That's a wrap on our deep dive into the art of expressing emotions in English.
Yes.
We hope you've enjoyed it and feel inspired to try some of these things out. Until next time, happy expressing.